You're listening to CKNW's Chief Executives, live from SFU's Beatty School of Business. Presented by Fortis BC, energy solutions for every customer.
Now, let's welcome our guest. For Chuck Jeunesse, President and CEO of Goldcorp, all that glitters is a term he is quite familiar with. And while for some, dealing with such a precious commodity can mean losing sight of the value found in both dedicated employees and prudent planning, Chuck has worked diligently to ensure he's never lost sight of the people who make their company shine. An honours graduate from the University of Arizona, Chuck spent over a decade studying law before making his way to the precious metals market. An executive with Glamis Gold from 1999, the 2006 merger with Goldcorp moved Chuck into an executive vice presidential role. His broad experience in mining transactions, public and private financing, permitting and international regulation made Chuck Jeunesse the obvious candidate for president and CEO. For upholding a golden business plan relying on both industry knowledge and dependable employees, it is our honour to welcome Chuck Jeunesse, today's guest for CKNW's Chief Executive Series.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. And before we get to Goldcorp, take us back to growing up in Nevada.
Well, thanks, Bill, and thanks for having me here this morning. Yeah, I grew up in Nevada and was always around the mining business. Nevada is actually one of the largest producers of gold as a geographic unit in the world, and my dad dabbled in the business. So when I went off to law school, I always had a sense that I would like to somehow be involved in mining, and that actually happened as soon as I returned to Reno from the University of Arizona. I started working for a firm that worked primarily on mining transactions, and so almost immediately started building relationships and understanding of the mining business, primarily gold.
But when you went to law school, I take it wasn't with the intention of becoming a lawyer.
Well, I wanted to be a lawyer, and I thought that I would be happy being a lawyer indefinitely. And then about 10 years in, I decided that I had clients who would come to me and say, "We'd like you to help us buy this mine, and we've decided to pay this much money." And then I would be the mechanic to go get that done. And after a while, I got tired of only being the mechanic. I wanted to know, how did you decide to buy this mine versus that one, and how did you decide to pay $100 million versus $120 million? And so my primary client at that point was Placer Dome, who was headquartered here in Vancouver. Right. And they offered me a job, and I said, okay, but I don't want to be a lawyer the rest of my life. I want to move into general management and business development. And they said, okay, and so that got me started on a new path.
But don't you have to know something about mines?
Well, yeah, and as I say, for that first 10 years, almost all of my practice was focused on doing transactions around exploration properties, producing properties. And one of the great things about being a lawyer is you do tend to learn a lot about the things that you're working on. You need to understand the business in order to properly represent a client doing a deal. And so I had picked up quite a bit, at least enough the guys at Placer thought that I was able to move into a different part of the business with what I'd picked up.
Interesting, you mentioned Placer Dome, headquartered here, Goldcorp, headquartered here. What is it about Vancouver that attracts the head offices of mines that are not really anywhere near here?
Well, Vancouver has historically been a center of mining finance, as you know, and it's not just Vancouver, but Canada as a whole has, it's hard to explain, kind of an entrepreneurial culture about particularly the startup and junior mining sector. And so these companies, Placer, Goldcorp, Teck, others that are headquartered here, Eldorado, you could go on and name many of them, all started off fairly small and grew into something. And it's because of the support, the banking, the accounting, the legal, all the support there is for mining and the history of mining in Canada and BC in particular that I think cultivates that kind of growth. And so you see a lot of companies headquartered, many more in Canada than, for example, in the United States.
But let me guess you don't spend a whole lot of time in Vancouver.
Oh, I'm on the road quite a bit. We we're the largest producer of gold in Canada, but all of our mines are in Ontario. We're building a new mine in Quebec. But we also have mines in Mexico, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Argentina, Chile. And so I tend to spend a lot of time on airplanes.
Talk a little bit about Argentina.
It's a difficult
challenge for you right now?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's such a beautiful country, and my wife and I were there. Our son actually did his semester abroad during school there, and we went and visited him, and we went fishing, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful country. And then when I got involved in the mining business there, I was very excited to go back. Unfortunately, they've had a lot of political challenges, and so our guys on the ground there have had their hands full dealing with foreign exchange issues and labor issues. But we have an outstanding asset there, and they're doing a great job. And I think it'll be a great mine. It's just not easy getting along.
It's been delayed.
Yeah.
So when will that actually start producing?
First gold in June of next year. So it's getting very close, but we're excited about it. We were originally expecting to start production right at the end of this year, and we've delayed that by 6 months.
And how much of a challenge is that, and how do you deal with it? Because it must cost you a lot of money to be waiting to start up.
Yeah, we just announced this last quarter that our capital costs were up by $200 million, and most of that in Argentina is due to just the fact that we have to go another 6 months at around $30 million a month just to keep the lights on. And so all that cost gets capitalized before you actually start production.
Some of the numbers you're throwing around are kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah,
100 million, 120 million, 30 million.
Well, the mining business is very capital intensive, but I think it goes to the fact that Goldcorp's now the largest gold company in the world by market cap. We generate a lot of earnings, a lot of revenue, and we invest a lot of money in the places where we do business, and so it is a big business.
How many people do you employ?
About 16,500 people around.
Wow. And how many of those would be here in Vancouver?
Around 150. And it's amazing because we were just talking yesterday when I came here in 2006, I think we had 40 people in the office. And the company has grown so much since then, and we've had to build a corporate staff to manage everything that we're doing, the finances, the environment, corporate social responsibility, investor relations, all the functions that you need in a corporate office to manage this growth out in the rest of the Americas is focused here in Vancouver.
And you've managed to grow a company worldwide during a very difficult economic period.
Well, for most of that period, the gold price has been going up, and so I'm not saying it was easy, but my predecessors, particularly Ian Telfer, had a vision that said gold price is going to go up, and so he went out and bought assets, including the company I came with, Glamis Gold, and he was right every step of the way and made very good deals at the right time in the cycle. For the last 3 or 4 years, things have settled down, and so it has been more difficult during that period, but fortunately, we had acquired assets, as I say, at the right time and have been investing in them while the gold price has settled down a little bit and aren't trying to grow the business or start a business right now, which would be a very difficult time.
We'll come back and talk a little bit about the kind of people you recruit, the kind of people you hire, what you're looking for in those people. But first, we must take a break. I'm talking with Chuck Jeunesse, the President and CEO of Goldcorp, and we are broadcasting from the Beatty School of Business in downtown Vancouver, the SFU campus, a presentation of Fortis, BC. Talking with Chuck Jeunesse of Goldcorp, you talked about 16,000 employees, but you said you had more than 100 here in Vancouver, and I'm curious to know what it is you look for in terms of in people. You're the leader, but what qualities do you look for in the people you hire?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I think that people are the most important thing that we have to do right in order for the company to be successful. You have to hire the right people. And we've just been talking recently about the fact that we have a fairly decentralized, autonomous structure where our mines and our offices around the world are empowered to make decisions. But But that can be a little messy because sometimes they take direction from Vancouver, other times they're making decisions on their own, and some people don't fit into that kind of a matrix organization. And so you need to make sure that you hire the right people who are comfortable sometimes with uncertainty, and they actually thrive in that environment where they're going to be left on their own to manage their business, and then sometimes there's going to be a corporate directive because we feel it's important enough to the overall organization to go in a certain direction. And the people who can thrive in that kind of an environment are the ones that we're looking for.
And what are their qualities?
Well, obviously they're smart, they're confident, I think the best measure of someone's success when looking to hire someone is look at whether they've been successful in the past. And that's what we look for, whether it's in school or in other businesses or avocations that they've had. And then we, as I say, we look for people who are entrepreneurial, who are independent, who don't need a huge staff around them to be comfortable and successful, who are willing to make decisions and be wrong. And then we have to be willing to empower them to be wrong. Because if you don't make mistakes, you're never going to learn. And if we as managers don't give people the authority to go out and run their business and make a mistake now and then they'll never learn and grow. And so that's a special kind of person. And I think we've got a lot of them at Goldcorp, and that's been a big part of our success.
Do you recruit from universities, from law schools, from other mining companies? Where do you get your people?
Recently, we've been getting a lot of them from other mining companies because as we've been succeeding, some others have been struggling, and so our people have been knocking on our doors quite a bit.
Why are you succeeding? I mean, you talked about gold has been something through my entire lifetime and yours has almost constantly increased in value. Mm-hmm. So why are you successful and other companies struggling?
Well, I don't want to name names, but there's some companies out there that have made some just big strategic blunders, and as a result, their companies are struggling either in terms of the way the market views them or debt levels or assets that they bought that now have turned out to not be so good. And we've been able to avoid those mistakes. And so it's, in some ways, we're the last man standing, and we've reached the pinnacle of the business from a market cap standpoint by just not falling.
Did you have a mentor growing up? Or early in your career?
Well, my dad, of course, I would say was my original mentor. Very hardworking, very smart, always trying to learn more, reading, never watched TV at night, read a new book every day, and so I learned a lot from him. But all through my business career, I've had someone like the guy who first hired me at Placer Dome, Jay Taylor. I learned a tremendous amount from him. Ian Telfer here at Goldcorp, Kevin MacArthur, who was the CEO immediately preceding me. We worked together in a partnership arrangement at Glamis for almost 10 years. There's been a variety of them along the way.
Now, your wife is here.
Yes.
You have a family?
Yeah, 2 boys.
How old?
29 and 28. It's been an amazing year for us. Both of them got married this year, and just last week we found out that both of them are going to be providing us grandkids here in the near future.
Your life is about to change dramatically.
Yeah, so we've got grandkids coming in March and June, right? So yeah, it's going to be very busy next Christmas.
And how are you going to balance your life? And I want to talk a little bit about how life-work balance, but it's about to change.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty successful at a lot of things. My life-work balance is not one that I would say is in the top of the list. I work a lot, and I try when I'm not working I can turn it off pretty good. But the amount of time that I'm working versus not working is probably not as balanced as it should be.
Take me through an average day.
I usually get to the office about 6:30. I usually leave anywhere between 5 and 7, and then I get home, and I like to cook, so if I'm home early enough, I'll usually, Susie will gather everything, and I'll put it together, and then I'll pull out the iPad and go back to work for a couple hours.
You live in downtown?
Yeah, I live in the same building as you,
Yeah.
down in Cole Harbour.
But you like the downtown lifestyle?
I love it. I mean, I walk to work, we walk to hockey games, we walk to the store, we walk to dinner. It's a great environment, great lifestyle.
It sounds like you managed to fit in. I mean, just the fact that you go to hockey games, and so you do take in the city, and you do have a life outside the office.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess one of the things that I'm not very good at is that I'm very aggressive about my playtime as well. So whether it's going to Whistler and going skiing or going, getting on a boat and doing something, we tend to be very busy when I'm not working. So it's not exactly restful, it's fun. But sometimes you just have to settle down and take a day off, and I'm not very good at that.
When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about how you look at the economy, and you have to look at the economy worldwide, but I'm also curious to know how you look at the economy here in British Columbia, and we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the Vanity Fair questions, the people that you'd like to have dinner with. Lots more to talk about with Chuck Jeunesse, CEO and President of Goldcorp, a presentation of Fortis BC, and we're coming to you from the Beatty School of Business, the downtown campus of Simon Fraser University. When you look at the economy, do you look at the BC economy, the Canadian economy, the worldwide economy? What do you look at, and do you get up every morning and take a look at the markets and take?
Yeah, I should have said earlier, the first thing I do when I wake up is turn on CNBC, and I flip back and forth with BNN. I want to know what's going on in not just the markets, but the economies. And it's mostly on a worldwide basis because that's what drives the gold price, which is the primary driver of our revenues. But as I said, we're the largest gold producer in Canada. Just in the Globe the other day, there was a point that said that Canada's number one export is gold, $14.5 billion a year as a product.
I don't think many people here would realize that.
Well, and it was in the Globe a week and a half ago in a sidebar article. And we're quite proud of that, and we think we're adding a lot to the economy of Canada. And so I pay a lot of attention to governmental policy and regulation on Canada as a whole. We actually don't have any operations today in BC. We've looked at quite a few things, and we'd love to be more active here in terms of owning and operating an asset. But right now, we don't have anything in BC.
Why?
It's just a matter of opportunity, and we've made a lot of acquisitions over the years. We look at things in terms of their size and their quality, political risk, and so geography is very important. And from that standpoint, BC is a great place. We would really like to do business here. It's just a matter of finding that right asset, that deposit of minerals that is high quality enough and large enough and long-lived enough to interest us. And there's some things that we, like I say, have looked at and continue to, and hopefully we'll find something.
How concerned are you about the political climate here? And I'm not thinking so much left, right, or liberal, NDP, but there's a very strong environmental movement that tends not to like mining.
I don't worry too much about that because I think if you look at the mines that we operate, 11 mines around the world, and we're building 3 new ones, our environmental record is outstanding. Our relationship with local communities is outstanding. And so I think if we found an asset in BC, we could do the work necessary to understand the concerns of the local residents, the First Nations, every stakeholder who would have an involvement in it, and with build a partnership that would allow the project to go forward. I'm confident of that.
How much has mining changed in your time in it? And I'm thinking technology and the ability to clean up a mine site when you're done.
It's not the technology that's changed so much as the mindset. Frankly, when I started in the business 30 years ago, we liked being out in the middle of the desert, away from people who would be watching what was doing, and we just kind of keep our heads down and do our thing and hope nobody noticed us. And I don't mean that we were doing anything environmentally improper, but if it was out in the middle of the nowhere, people tended not to pay attention. That's clearly changed a long time ago, and our core values now are around doing our business such that we create benefits for all of the stakeholders around us, and that means making sure that we can clean up everything that we're doing. And we do have an impact on the environment. I mean, we dig big holes in the ground, but then we either fill them or we recontour them, and we take care of the tailings and the water and all the dirt that's been moved. And I've been fortunate to be involved in a few mines from start to finish, down in California and in Honduras and in Nevada. And I'm quite proud of the fact that we've been able to clean those up in a way that they're very productive pieces of land today, and with no remaining environmental issues.
What's start to finish? What's the life of a mine?
It can vary, of course, but in these cases they were 10 to 12, 15 years. We've got mines now at Red Lake in Ontario that have lasted 60 years, and I'd be surprised if it's not there another 60 years. It's just the nature of the deposit that are quite different.
We talked about the economy. Gold is something that tends to withstand inflation?
That's the theory, and it has over time, but within 5 or 3 or 10-year cycles, you can get offside that balance. And so our jobs are to make sure that we don't just assume if the gold price, or if prices are inflating, the gold price will bail us out. We have to focus every day on containing our costs and running our business as efficiently as we can so that we can maintain our margins, because if we assume the gold price is going to bail us out, we'll be wrong, at least during important 3 to 5 year cycles.
But what drives that price? What makes gold increase in value almost all the time?
Well, it's supply and demand, and people sometimes scoff when I say that, because 90% of all the gold ever produced is above ground, but most of it is sitting in central bank vaults where it's not going to be sold. The U.S. will never sell its gold. Germany, France, Italy will not sell their gold. So. And then, in fact, central banks are net buyers of gold. And so if you think about it in that term, then you have to look at, okay, how much mine supply is being provided and what's the demand? And the demand is about even 40% jewelry and physical gold buying and 40% investment demand. And then there's 10 that's electronics and 10 that's central bank demand. And so that's how we analyze the gold market, is what's going on the demand side and what's going on the supply side. And in short, we're producing less gold as an industry, and the demand is going up. So that's what's driving the price. It's
curious to me, you say that the U.S., for example, will never sell its gold. Why does it buy it if it's never going to sell it?
Well, it's had it forever. It previously was the base for the currency. Until 1973, the U.S. and most of the world was on a gold standard, so that each dollar that was issued was backed by a portion of gold at Fort Knox. It's off the gold standard now, but we could go into a lot of different explanations, but it would be such an emotional and dramatic change for the U.S. to all of a sudden say, we don't need our gold, our currency by itself, which has struggled on its own, is okay without anything backing it up. I don't see that ever happening.
Companies talk about corporate responsibility. I want to come back and talk to you a bit about that, because increasingly I see Goldcorp involved in various community events and charities and so on. So I want to find out a little bit about that when we come back. Talking with Chuck Jeunesse, President and CEO of Goldcorp. This is a presentation of Fortis, BC, and we are broadcasting from the Beatty School of Business, the downtown campus of SFU. Chuck Jeunesse is our guest this morning, and we've talked a lot about mining and the economy and the price of gold, but I'm also curious to know about your involvement in the community, because increasingly I have seen the name Goldcorp associated with various charities and events in and around the Lower Mainland, and I'm just curious to know what drives you in that direction and how you decide to become involved.
Well, it's really a core value of the company. I mean, we believe that we've been very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time during this bull market in gold. Our earnings and revenues have increased dramatically over the last 10 years, and we want to give something back. So we've adopted the Imagine Canada guidelines of 1% of our pre-tax earnings. And so we budget that each year in terms of our philanthropic giving around the community. And then we spend a lot of time thinking about how to do it in a way that has the best impact. So if you look around, you'll see that we support Special Olympics and the aquarium and the opera and the symphony. And I think most important to me, we've made a real effort over the last 4 or 5 years on the downtown east side. And so we've supported housing, we've supported the SFU school, a Goldcorp School of Performing Arts. And right now we're very focused on the core issues of mental health and addiction. And so we've supported Vancouver General's Assertive Community Treatment Program, a fellowship program at St. Paul's to train physicians in mental health and addiction. I sit on the Interchange Foundation board that's dealing with very specific issues with respect to addiction and opioid treatment. And I just think it's the right thing to do. As I said, we've been fortunate, and Vancouver's a great place. It's where our employees live and work, and we want to help make it a better place.
But how do you choose what charities to support?
We have a lot of arguments. No, everybody has their ideas and their favorites. I didn't mention United Way. We've been one of the largest United Way supporters for many years. But, that's actually one of the things that the CEO gets kind of to make a decision on. And I love it. When I was appointed CEO, Ian Telfer said, I went to him with one of my ideas about a charitable donation. He said, look, that's your prerogative at this point. So where you want to take the focus on charitable giving, you take it. And it's been a lot of fun. And so that has been kind of for me, the downtown east side has been that focus.
What are some of the other joys? I was going to say perks, but I don't mean it to sound that way. Sort of joys of being a CEO. What do you relish in being the top dog?
I don't know that it's being the top dog. I just love to see the success of our company and the growth of the people. I mean, there's people, and we were just going over our leadership group yesterday, talking about rising stars within the organization and thinking about how we want their careers to develop over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's the thing that I get the most enjoyment out of, is seeing people grow and take on new responsibilities. And all of a sudden somebody goes from being an accountant 7 years ago to running one of our mines now. And that's tremendous growth. And that's
so. Are there real opportunities for young people to look at mining as an opportunity, as a career path?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we hire, of course, all the earth scientists, the geologists, engineers, metallurgists, and there's a desperate need for high-quality technical people throughout the industry, not just Goldcorp. But whether it's lawyers or accountants or human resource professionals or communications professionals, there's just so many areas where we need high-quality people. And we've been, very actively growing over the last few years. And like I say, watching those people come into the organization and then grow over time is probably the most exciting.
So do you have people who are actually scouting universities, looking for people who...
Yep.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. We have people that go to all the employment fairs and recruiting days at universities in Canada, the U.S., Mexico, looking for those technical people, but also, as I say, we've got formal programs for engineering and geology where we bring people in and say, okay, if you join Goldcorp, you'll get to go to 4 mines over 2 years and be exposed to a variety of different geographies and places, and that's done to attract them because it is a very competitive business.
I'm wondering if your phone is going to be ringing this afternoon.
I hope so.
Because it sounds very appealing, and it may not be a field that people instinctively think about. That the young person going to university today may not be thinking mining, but hearing you, they might be. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. I also have my Vanity Fair questions. I want to know who you're going to have dinner with and why, and we'll do that when we come back. From the Beatty School of Business at the SFU campus downtown, a presentation of Fortis, BC. Chuck Jeunesse is our guest this morning, the last in our series this year of CEOs. He is the CEO of Goldcorp, and this is a presentation of Fortis, BC, who had fair warning. The four people that you would like to have dinner with, they can be dead or alive, but I'm really curious to know who they are and why.
I think I told you before we started, every time I think about this, I come up with different people, but I guess the four for me, and this is a bizarre collection, would be first my grandfather, who died when I was 8, and since then I hear so many things about him that I didn't know, that I'd love to sit down and talk to him about his life. And he immigrated from Czechoslovakia when he was about 30 and had a very difficult life, assimilating in the eastern U.S. And I'd just like to go through that with him. Ronald Reagan. And it's not a political choice as much as, I grew up in the 70s in the U.S. when things were kind of ugly. We had the Arab oil embargo and the economy was in horrible shape, 20% inflation, the Iranian hostage crisis. And then the year I graduated is when Reagan was elected, and everything kind of turned around. And he was just such a great communicator, and I believe communication is one of the key aspects of leadership. And I'd love to sit and talk to him about how he was able to always put on such a great face and get people excited as a leader. And so he would be one.
He also has a reputation of having been kind of a CEO himself, in that he hired or appointed really smart people and had them around him and listened to him and took good advice.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I struggle with because I'm a control guy. I'm looking around, people in the office.
They're all nodding.
Yeah, they're nodding. I'm a bit of a control freak. So I try to delegate and give people authority to go run their business, but I want to know what's going on. And there's a fine line between information and having my fingers too much involved. And that'd be an interesting discussion with someone like that.
Okay, so who else?
And this is going to sound very weird, but Alexander the Great. I grew up just immersed reading Greek mythology and then Greek history and the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then I found my way to reading about Alexander. And I mean, this guy, by 26 years old, he had conquered most of the modern world, and I'd love to understand why. What made this
because
little,
he could.
little kingdom in Macedonia decide that he wanted, and at that age and with his background, that he wanted to just raise armies and start traveling around the world. I think it would be fascinating, and that whole time period is just something that's always been very much of interest to me.
You got one more.
Warren Buffett, and that's probably for any business person. Geez, wouldn't it be great? I actually disagree with him on two fundamental things. One, he's always downplayed gold as an investment. He says, I don't understand it. It has no intrinsic value, which is ridiculous. It's had intrinsic value for 3,000 years, and it's been used as currency. And I'd love to have that discussion with him. And then I think he's been fairly misleading from a political standpoint on his tax policy about it's not right that he doesn't pay as much taxes as secretary, and he knows that's not really fair because he only makes money based on dividends, whereas most people make it in salary. So I'd like to have that discussion with him.
It would be an interesting dinner to be at for sure.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, you've got grandchildren coming. You told me before we went on the air that you've bought a boat.
Yep.
So you're planning to spend some time out of the office.
Yeah, we Well, we got out 3 times this summer.
3 times.
You know, we do the best we can, and I think that living in Vancouver, one of the ways to best see it and appreciate it is from the water, and so we took the course. We learned how to sail ourselves around or motor ourselves around, and we bought a boat, and it's fantastic. We really enjoy it, but don't get to do quite as much of it as I'd like.
It sounds like you're here to stay, though, at least for the time being.
I love it here, and I love my job, and I'm not going anywhere, and if it's up to me, for at least the near term.
Well, I thank you for doing this and for being here this morning, because I know, like all the CEOs, you're a very busy person, but to take the time to do this has been a great pleasure.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate it, and thanks, everybody, for being here.